The Vakanar Dominion was an empire built on conquest. Their vast fleet spanned hundreds of star systems, and their reputation for crushing weaker species under their heel was well earned. So when the Dominion's deep space probes detected an uncharted world on the fringes of the periphery expanse, the High Council saw an opportunity, either a new species to subjugate or a planet to strip for resources. Grand Strategist Zalvoran himself led the fleet to investigate. He was no ordinary conqueror, he was methodical, ruthless, and ever curious about unknown threats. The world in question had no official designation, just a cryptic entry in the ancient archives, Sol 3. A forgotten world. Dead for eons, according to records. Yet, as the fleet entered orbit, what they found defied expectation. The planet that shouldn't be. Sol 3 wasn't just barren, it was scarred. The landscape was a battlefield fossilized in time. Ruined cities stood like skeletal remains, their towering structures crumbling under the weight of centuries. Enormous craters pockmarked the surface, evidence of a long-extinct war. The atmosphere was thin but breathable, and radiation levels, while present, had faded enough for exploration. But the most baffling discovery was this: there were no bodies. No fossils, no remains, nothing to suggest what had once lived here. The Vakanar deployed their best expedition teams, warriors clad in exosuits and armed with plasma rifles, ready to claim whatever secrets this world held. They moved cautiously, scanning the ruins, piecing together fragmented data. Then, they found the first message. A warning from the dead. It was carved into a metal monument at the heart of the ruined city. The language was ancient, but their AI quickly translated it. Asterisk, to those who find this world, turn back. The Great War consumed us, but our kind is not truly gone. We are patient. We endure. And when we return, the galaxy will tremble. Asterisk. The Dominion warriors exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the boastful epitaph of a fallen species. It was a promise. Further scans revealed something chilling: structures beneath the surface, vast underground bunkers, some still sealed. Whatever had happened to this world's inhabitants, they had gone to great lengths to preserve something. Zalvoran ordered the bunkers opened. The first awakening. The first bunker was breached by plasma cutters, its reinforced door giving way with a groan. Inside, the air was stale, but the facility remained intact. The walls bore more warnings, though these were more desperate, less composed. Asterisk, they are buried deep. Do not disturb them. Asterisk. Asterisk, if you hear the whispers, it is already too late. Asterisk. A deep, guttural thrum echoed from the depths of the bunker. Something was waking up. The Vakanar warriors gripped their weapons. They had conquered countless worlds, crushed entire civilizations beneath their boots. They feared nothing. And yet, for the first time in centuries, an emotion they did not recognize crawled up their spines. Dread. The deep thrum reverberated through the ancient bunker, sending shivers through the hardened Vakanar warriors. Their exosuits enhanced their senses, amplifying even the slightest tremor, and right now, every fiber of their being screamed a single word: asterisk, danger star. Grand Strategist Zalvoran stood at the entrance, observing the scene with cold calculation. Fear was unbecoming of the Dominion's elite. He would not tolerate weakness. Proceed, he commanded. The lead warrior, Captain Varric, nodded and stepped forward, his plasma rifle at the ready. He moved cautiously, his squad following close behind. The bunker's interior was massive, a labyrinth of corridors and chambers lined with strange machines, some shattered, others still humming with an eerie residual energy. Then they found it. The Chamber of Echoes. At the bunker's lowest level, the team discovered an enormous door, reinforced with metals their scanners could not identify. Unlike the first entrance, this one had not been pried open by time, it had been sealed deliberately. Ancient symbols covered its surface, seemingly burned into the metal itself. The AI translated with difficulty, piecing together fragments of a long-lost language. Asterisk, do not open. They are not meant for this galaxy. Asterisk. Zalvoran's eyes narrowed. The cryptic warnings were becoming more frequent. More desperate. The species that had once ruled this world had feared something. But the Vakanar feared nothing. Cut it open, he ordered. The engineers activated their plasma cutters, slicing through the ancient metal with precision. The door crumbled, and the air inside rushed out in a whispering hiss. The chamber beyond was dark. Silent. But something moved within. And then, the screaming began. The unseen predators. Captain Varric's squad barely had time to react. Shapes lunged from the shadows, humanoid, yet wrong. Their movements were impossibly fast, their bodies shifting like living shadows. Clawed hands tore through exosuits as if they were paper. Varric managed to fire a shot. A direct plasma blast. It should have reduced anything to a smoldering corpse. But the creature barely staggered. It adapted. A second later, its form shifted, and the next plasma shot passed harmlessly through it. Zalvoran watched in horror as his elite warriors were slaughtered in seconds. The creatures did not kill like mindless beasts. They moved with strategy, precision, calculating weaknesses in real time. Then, one of them spoke. "You are not them." The voice was deep, layered, reverberating like an echo across dimensions. Zalvoran's blood ran cold. The Dominion had conquered countless species, crushed countless rebellions. But never, not once, had a species emerged from the past with such raw dominance. And yet, something told him these were not the rulers of Sol 3. No, these were something else entirely. The true rulers were still out there. And they would return. The screams of the Vakanar warriors echoed through the bunker as the creatures, those shadowed horrors, ripped through their ranks with an inhuman precision. The squad was no match for them. Even the most advanced exosuits couldn't protect against such unnatural speed, agility, and power. Captain Varric fell first. His body was torn apart before he even had a chance to react, his lifeless form crumpling in an instant. His comrades, stunned and overwhelmed, fared no better. Within moments, the entire squad was wiped out, leaving only the cold silence of death. Zalvoran stood at the chamber's entrance, his heart pounding in his chest, but his mind sharp as ever. He had seen battles, massacres, but never anything like this. His own elite warriors, the pride of the Dominion, had been slaughtered without a single chance of retaliation. It was clear now that this planet had not just been abandoned, it had been forgotten for a reason. The creatures that stalked the shadows, now converging in the center of the chamber, were not just predators. They were hunters, engineered for War Star. As Zalvoran watched, a strange sensation gripped him. The creatures began to change. Their forms shifted, flowing between shadows, becoming one with the darkness. The temperature in the chamber dropped, the air thickening with an oppressive weight. Their bodies seemed to merge into a single, massive entity. In an instant, the shadows resolved into a single figure, towering over Zalvoran. It was humanoid but unmistakably alien, its skin dark as the void, eyes glowing with a terrifying energy. It spoke in that same layered, otherworldly voice. "You seek what is not yours." Zalvoran tightened his grip on his plasma pistol. "I seek nothing. I take what I will." The creature's eyes narrowed. "You are not like the others. You do not understand. You will." Before Zalvoran could react, the creature moved. It was so fast, a blur of shadow, and in the blink of an eye, it was upon him. The air cracked with unnatural force, and the ground beneath his feet shuddered. His plasma pistol flew from his hand as if it had been struck by an invisible force. Zalvoran found himself on his knees, the creature's cold fingers around his throat, lifting him effortlessly. Despite his vast strength and training, he could not move. His vision blurred as the creature's voice filled his mind. "We are the forgotten. The ones who were buried beneath the stars. And we will rise again." The words reverberated within Zalvoran's mind. He realized, in that horrifying moment, that these creatures were not merely survivors. They were ancient. The horrors of Sol 3 were the remnants of a war so devastating that it had wiped out an entire species, leaving only these things behind. But they had not died. No, they had waited. They had endured. And now, with the Dominion's arrival, they were awakening. The creature's grip loosened, and Zalvorin fell to the ground, gasping for air. The being slowly stepped back, its form shifting once more into the shadows. The temperature in the chamber returned to normal, but the oppressive weight remained. "Leave this world, strategist," the creature's voice echoed. "Return to your empire. Warn them. The Forgotten are returning." Zalvorin rose to his feet, every part of him trembling with fury and disbelief. He had been bested, humiliated. But more than that, he was now certain. This planet held something beyond even his understanding. Something that could rival the Dominion itself. And that knowledge would haunt him forever. Zalvorin's heart raced as he staggered back toward the entrance of the chamber, his mind awash with terror and fury. The creature's words echoed in his ears, "The Forgotten are returning." For the first time in his life, Grand Strategist Zalvorin, the brilliant tactician, the conqueror of countless worlds, felt a cold grip of uncertainty. The planet of Sol 3 was not just some abandoned, unremarkable rock. It was the birthplace of something ancient, something terrifying, and something that would soon be unleashed upon the galaxy. He had seen the evidence, the fallen Vacanar warriors, the deadly creatures, the remnants of a lost civilization. The creatures were not a singular threat, they were part of something much larger. And Zalvorin knew that if he didn't act quickly, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Vacanar Dominion had just stumbled upon the greatest threat they had ever encountered. The decision to return. Zalvorin wasted no time in calling for the retreat. He gave the order to his remaining fleet to evacuate the planet, to leave Sol 3 behind. The discovery had been too dangerous, too unpredictable. His warriors may have been the galaxy's finest, but even they had met their match here. The Grand Strategist boarded the Black Hammer, the flagship of the Vacanar fleet, and watched as his fleet moved into the void of space, leaving the haunting surface of Sol 3 behind. His mind raced, calculating the implications of everything he had learned. He knew he couldn't face the Forgotten alone. He needed a plan, one that involved more than just brute force. These creatures had proven that they were more than mere beasts. They had intelligence, power, and patience. As his fleet moved into the dark reaches of space, Zalvorin activated the communications relay. He would report to the High Council, every detail. The time for conquest was over. The time for survival had begun. The High Council's response. The High Council convened in a chamber of glass and metal, deep within the heart of the Dominion's capital. Zalvorin stood before them, his mind still reeling from the encounter with the creatures beneath the surface of Sol 3. The images of his fallen warriors haunted him. The echoes of that strange voice haunted him. "We cannot ignore what has happened," Zalvorin began, his voice steady but filled with a chilling urgency. "We've stumbled upon a power far beyond anything we've encountered. The beings that now inhabit Sol 3, they are not of this galaxy star. They are ancient, far older than any of us, and they are waiting to return." The High Council listened in silence. There were murmurs of disbelief, but none dared to interrupt Zalvorin. The strategist was known for his precision and cold calculation, and the destruction of an entire squad of Vacanar warriors had proven that this was no ordinary threat. Zalvorin continued, his words deliberate, calculating. "They are not dead. They are dormant, biding their time. If we do not act now, they will rise again. And when they do, they will sweep across the stars with an unstoppable force. The Dominion will fall." One of the elder members of the High Council, a woman whose face was a mass of scars and deep-set eyes, spoke. "What do you propose, Zalvorin? We cannot simply wipe them out. What you describe sounds like a species that has transcended even death. A species that has been waiting for eons." Zalvorin's gaze hardened. We will need more than an army. We will need to understand them. We must go back to Sol 3, infiltrate their hive, learn their weaknesses, and exploit them. The Forgotten are the key to an unimaginable power. And we will control that power, or die trying. There was a long silence. Then the High Council spoke as one: prepare for the second phase of the mission. The final preparations. Zalvorin left the High Council chamber with a heavy heart but a clearer purpose. The Dominion's strategy had always been one of swift domination. But this was a different kind of war. He would have to enter the very heart of the forgotten species and learn their secrets, or the galaxy would be consumed by their return. But even as Zalvorin prepared for the next phase of his mission, he could feel it, the deep sense of foreboding. His time on Sol 3 had left an indelible mark on him. The creatures he had encountered were not just remnants of a forgotten species, they were something much darker. And the more he thought about their message, the more it seemed clear. They had not been waiting to return. They had been waiting to teach the galaxy a lesson. Zalvorin's mind was consumed by the mission ahead. The Vakanar Dominion had never faced anything like this, the prospect of learning the truth about the Forgotten, those ancient creatures who had somehow survived the collapse of their own civilization. Their silent patience, their whispers from the depths of Sol 3, gnawed at the strategist's resolve. This was no longer about conquest. It was about survival. The preparations for the second phase of the mission were underway. The Vakanar fleet was being restructured, outfitted with advanced stealth technology to evade detection. No one could afford to know they were coming. Sol 3 had to remain hidden. Zalvorin spent long hours reviewing data, piecing together the mysteries of the forgotten planet. The more he dug, the more the truth became apparent. The war that had once torn this planet apart wasn't a mere civil war or a conflict with an outside enemy. No, this was something much darker. The survivors of that war weren't merely soldiers, they were the last of an ancient species, a species that had been manipulated by something far beyond their comprehension. The genetic experimentation. As Zalvorin dug deeper into the old records, a chilling pattern began to emerge. The ruins beneath the surface of Sol 3 were not simply the remnants of a fallen civilization, they were the ruins of a scientific experiment. Sol 3 had once been home to a technologically advanced species, the Zori. Their history, now mostly lost to time, indicated they had been skilled in biotechnology, capable of blending organic matter with mechanical enhancements, altering the very essence of life itself. The war that ravaged their planet had been a result of their own ambition. Desperate to evolve beyond their limits, the Zori had begun experimenting with genetic manipulation, engineering their own species into something greater, something superior star. But they had pushed too far. The resulting experiments were the creatures Zalvorin had encountered in the bunker. These creatures weren't just survivors, they were the result of their creator's hubris. Zalvorin's eyes narrowed as he uncovered the last piece of the puzzle. The Zori had not only created these monstrous entities, they had become them. The creatures that now called Sol 3 home were not mindless predators, they were the Zori themselves, altered beyond recognition, cursed with immortality and bound by an eternal vengeance. The surviving members of the Zori had become the very things they had sought to control, unstoppable, unfeeling, and hunting the remnants of their own civilization. They were the architects of their own downfall. The message from the past. As Zalvorin pondered the implications of this revelation, he came across a final, disturbing record, a message left by the last leader of the Zori, preserved within the heart of Sol 3's central databanks. The transmission was ancient, but the language had been deciphered with chilling clarity. We sought to create life that would last forever. We succeeded. But the price was more than we could have imagined. We are no longer the beings we once were. We have become something else, the forgotten star. And we wait, as the galaxy unravels around us. The time is near. The end is coming. But we will return. We will make them remember. Zalvorin stared at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. The message was clear, the Zori had been consumed by their own creation. And now, that creation was waking. The forgotten species that had once ruled this planet were not gone, they had been transformed into something far worse. Their resurrection was inevitable. And when they returned, the galaxy would pay the price for their mistakes. Preparing for the invasion. As Zalvorin prepared to lead his forces back to Sol 3, the weight of the task ahead seemed almost too much to bear. The battle was no longer about invasion, it was about preventing an apocalypse. The forgotten species were no longer just a threat to the Vakanar dominion, they were a threat to every living creature in the galaxy. Zalvorin ordered the fleet to prepare for a full-scale assault. But this would not be a simple conquest. There would be no grand battles, no victorious marches across the planet. This time, the Vakanar would fight for survival, covertly, silently, and with every resource at their disposal. The stakes had never been higher. And as Zalvorin watched his fleet prepare for departure, he felt the oppressive weight of Sol 3's mysteries closing in. It wasn't just the forgotten that haunted this planet. It was the realization that the galaxy had underestimated the power of the old races, those who had vanished long before the rise of empires like the Vakanar. These forgotten horrors had no place in the galaxy anymore. But they were about to reclaim their lost dominion. And when they did, Zalvorin knew one thing for certain, the galaxy would never be the same. Zalvorin's fleet hovered just outside the atmosphere of Sol 3, hidden in the black void of space. Their advanced stealth systems shielded them from detection, but the Grand Strategist knew that silence wouldn't be enough to guarantee success. They had learned enough to understand the danger, now it was time to act. The Vakanar were an empire built on unrelenting military strength. Yet, as Zalvorin led his forces down into the depths of Sol 3, he felt a rising tension. This wouldn't be a straightforward battle of attrition. The forgotten species had once been the ultimate weapon, a species that could adapt, evolve, and anticipate every move. What the Vakanar had faced so far was nothing more than a glimpse of the larger force at work. The Grand Strategist had one objective: to infiltrate the heart of the Forgotten's domain and uncover their true weakness. This wasn't a battle of firepower. It was a war of knowledge. Entering the heart of Sol 3. Zalvorin led a small team of elite Vakanar infiltrators, clad in the best stealth suits their engineers could provide. They moved silently across the surface of the planet, each step measured and precise. The rest of the fleet remained in orbit, awaiting the signal. The team made their way through the wreckage of the old cities, now overrun with thick vines and alien vegetation that twisted around ancient structures like living tendrils. The air was thick with the scent of decay, both organic and mechanical. The Forgotten had not merely remained hidden, they had changed the planet, bent it to their will. For hours, the team navigated the ruins, skirting detection from the monstrous creatures that still roamed the surface. They knew better than to engage. The Forgotten had learned to control the planet's ecosystems, creating traps, creatures, and environmental hazards designed to keep intruders at bay. The Vakanar infiltrators were cautious, moving with an eerie silence, careful not to disturb anything that could alert the Forgotten. Finally, they arrived at the heart of the planet's most ancient structure, a massive underground bunker, hidden beneath the layers of debris and overgrowth. The structure was far older than anything the Vakanar had encountered, its architecture was both beautiful and terrifying. Strange, geometric patterns covered the walls, resonating with a faint, unnatural hum. Zalvorin and his team entered the bunker. There, they found a darkened chamber filled with remnants of technology. It was in this room that the true nature of the forgotten species began to reveal itself. The unveiling. As the Vakanar team moved deeper into the bunker, they discovered that the creatures of Sol 3 were not merely biological in nature. They were synthetic, a twisted fusion of organic matter and advanced technology, an entirely new form of life that was neither fully alive nor entirely machine. Their creators had turned their own bodies into weapons, merging flesh with cybernetic enhancements. Zalvorin's heart sank. These were not simple survivors of a lost civilization. They had been engineered for war, crafted by their creators to be the ultimate soldiers. And now, that power had become a curse. They had become trapped in a cycle of eternal life, constantly evolving and adapting, but never truly living. The chamber itself held the answers Zalvorin needed. There, in the center of the room, stood a large, spherical device, a black, pulsating core that seemed to draw in the very energy of the planet. As Zalvorin studied it, the realization hit him like a bolt of lightning: the core wasn't just a power source. It was a prison. This device had been the Zori's final, desperate measure to contain their creation, to bind their own species in stasis, locked away in this tomb for millennia. The Forgotten had never truly been dead. They had been waiting for the right moment to break free. The choice. Zalvorin approached the core cautiously, every instinct telling him to destroy it. He could end the threat right here, right now. He had the power to annihilate the Forgotten species once and for all. But as he stood before the device, he felt the weight of the decision bearing down on him. The core pulsed again, and a strange, low voice resonated within his mind. It was the voice of the Forgotten, the same voice he had heard during his first encounter. You seek to destroy us, but you do not understand. We were not meant to be this way. We are not your enemy. The true enemy is the one who created us. Zalvorin froze. The voice wasn't threatening, it was filled with a deep, aching sorrow. For the first time, he realized that the Forgotten species were not invaders, nor conquerors. They were victims. Their creators, the Zori, had trapped them in an endless cycle of suffering, turning them into weapons against their will. The Grand Strategist's mind raced. If he destroyed the core, he would eradicate the Forgotten species, but at what cost? He wasn't sure who the true enemy was anymore. Was it the Zori, whose ambition had caused this tragedy? Or was it the Forgotten, an ancient species that had been manipulated into becoming monsters, forever trapped in a war that wasn't theirs? Zalvorin's heart pounded. The decision wasn't as simple as it seemed. The fate of the galaxy, perhaps even the future of all sentient species, was in his hands. Zalvorin stood before the pulsating core, every nerve in his body taut with the weight of his decision. The room around him felt oppressive, as if the very walls were closing in, the hum of the core growing louder, more insistent. His mind raced through the possibilities. The Zori, with all their advanced technology, had created these creatures, but they had done so out of a desperate need for immortality, a need that had turned their creations into an eternal nightmare. Now, that nightmare was on the verge of breaking free, and Zalvorin was caught in the middle, a strategist torn between survival and mercy. The voice of the Forgotten. Once again, the voice echoed in his mind, soft but filled with profound sorrow. You do not understand, strategist. We were not meant to become this. We were meant to be the guardians. We were meant to be protectors. The voice was not like the growls or the howls of the creatures Zalvorin had fought earlier. It was clear, almost human, with a tone of regret, an ancient being who had lost its way but still clung to some shred of its former purpose. Zalvorin's fingers hovered over the controls of his wrist communicator, ready to call for the fleet to obliterate the planet and its secrets. But he hesitated. He could end it all. He could destroy the core, wipe out the Forgotten species, and leave the galaxy untainted by this ancient power. But would that truly end the threat, or was he simply acting out of fear? Would he become the very thing he fought against, the one who eradicates without understanding? Zalvorin closed his eyes, the weight of his decisions crushing him. His mind flashed back to the beginning of his journey to Sol 3, to the Vakanar warriors he had led into battle, to the countless worlds he had conquered. He had always believed that victory lay in power, dominating, controlling, destroying. But this felt different. There was more at stake than simply winning. The Forgotten weren't invaders, they were victims of a long-forgotten war. Could they be saved? Could they ever find redemption? The final revelation. As the room pulsed with the energy of the core, a new realization dawned on Zalvorin. The Zori had created the Forgotten species as weapons, yes, but that didn't mean they were beyond saving. They were not merely tools of destruction. They were sentient beings trapped in a cycle of suffering. But what if there was another way? What if the Valkanar Dominion, with all its might, could change the fate of these creatures? The voice in his mind continued, we cannot be what we were. But we do not wish to remain as we are. The curse we bear is one of our own making. Help us break it. Help us find peace. Zalvoran lowered his hand from the communicator. His tactical mind whirred, but it had already begun to shift focus. The forgotten species could be weaponized, yes, but they could also be freed. If he destroyed the core, he would kill them all. But what if he could dismantle it slowly, perhaps reverse the process? What if he could help them heal and rediscover their original purpose? Zalvoran turned to his team, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that churned within him. We need to work quickly. We will disable the core, but we will not destroy it. We will give them a chance to reclaim their lost humanity, if there is any left. We must break the cycle of their imprisonment. His team looked to him, hesitant at first, but they trusted him. They had followed him through countless campaigns, and now, they would follow him into the most uncertain battle of their lives. They began to set up their devices, hacking into the core's systems, bypassing the fail-safe mechanisms left by the Zori. The sacrifice. As they worked, the room began to tremble. The Forgotten, now sensing the disturbance, stirred restlessly, their forms shifting in and out of the shadows. Zalvoran knew they had little time. The creatures were on the verge of breaking free, and if they did, the Valkanar would have no chance of stopping them, not without understanding the true nature of the threat. Suddenly, a deafening shriek filled the room, a sound so primal it rattled the bones of the Valkanar infiltrators. One of the forgotten creatures appeared in front of them, its body towering and monstrous, its eyes filled with an ancient rage. Zalvoran stood firm, his team preparing their weapons. But before they could react, the creature spoke, its voice deep and resonant. You have no right to free us. The air grew thick with the creature's power, but Zalvoran did not falter. He knew that if they fought, they would only reinforce the curse. If they fought, they would only become another generation of torment. We do not wish to free you from your suffering, Zalvoran said, his voice low but unwavering. We wish to help you end it. The core must be deactivated, but not destroyed. Your creators trapped you, but we can undo the damage, together. For a long moment, the Forgotten stood in silence. Then, with a sound that could have been a sigh or a growl, the creature stepped back. It seemed to consider the offer, its glowing eyes narrowing. Finally, it spoke, its voice softer this time. Then you must understand, we cannot escape without a price. We are the consequence of our own creation. If you wish to free us, you must be prepared to sacrifice. Zalvoran knew the meaning behind those words. There would be no redemption without cost. To free the Forgotten would mean facing the horrors of the past, and bearing the consequences. He nodded. We will pay that price. The team worked with renewed urgency, and as the core finally powered down, the Forgotten species began to change. Their forms, once twisted and monstrous, began to shift back to something more recognizable, something more human. And with that shift, the galaxy's fate was rewritten. Zalvoran and his team stood in the heart of Sol 3, watching as the Forgotten species, no longer monsters but broken, lost souls, stood beside them. They were free from their creator's curse. But at what cost? The galaxy had witnessed the power of the Forgotten, and their redemption could not erase the horrors they had caused. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, this would not be the last time the galaxy faced the consequences of its past.